Today we're going to go over the 5 levels of food production in Songs of Syx all in one run. Let's get into it. So the first level is going to be basic production. The first thing you should know about getting into farms, if you're new to the game here, choose Crotonians. They're the best farmers for the vast majority of things. But if you're looking for pastures, it's probably going to be the Talabi that are better. We'll get into that a little bit later. But just to make it easier for yourself, the Crotonians, the big people here, they are excellent farmers. And as always, welcome to LaundryTown. My name's Laundry. Let's see what we can do. If you haven't played the game before, I'm not going to get into too much detail about every single menu that you see. This is a relatively advanced game, and I have a whole bunch of tips for you if this is kind of a new game for you. I'm just going to be talking about farming in this one. For basic production, you're looking for a simple plug-and-play food production process, right? So we're going to stick with farms at first. Farms has all of your growable products, and each of these items as a farm will produce once a year. We'll get into that a little bit later. This is different from your husbandry, which these will actually produce their products every single day. Hunter will also produce their products as well every single day. Aquaculture, which is a fishery, will do the same thing. We're going to stick with the farms. What we're going to do is we're going to make a fruit farm. I'm going to make a really fast, tiny farm. The purpose behind a tiny farm is that we can get it planted as soon as possible. I set down a 10 by 12 square, so that's 120 total spots. I set it down in an area that's got a whole bunch of moisture, and if I look up here, soil is 110%, which is as high as it's going to go in this patch, at least from what I've seen. And so this is a great little tiny farm that we have. Up at the top in the building construction menu, you can see this kind of icon where the apples are, and it says 12. That means I'm going to need to have 12 fruits in order to actually plant this farm, and if I don't have those fruits, nothing's going to get planted. Luckily, I got plenty of fruits. And you can see in the throne, and first time playing, you have some resources already available to you, including 60 fruit and 60 vegetables. You also have some other things as well, like rations, livestock, stone, wood. But so that means I want to keep some of these fruits and some of these veggies in order to actually plant the farms. But that's not the only type of food I have available to me. On the map, you can see different icons of things. Everything that's in green is basically something you would also be able to farm like this. And just look at the icons. I currently see that we only have 2 spots for fruits and veggies, and those are going to be down here. So this little area down here I can see is for fruits, and if I right click here, I can see all of the places where I'd be able to naturally get fruits from this map. Now they're actually not ready to pick yet. They'll be ready on the 3rd day of summer, so it's a few days away. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to have the forage button. I'm going to make sure that we forage all of these fruits and then all of the veggies will be good to go. I'm also going to control click, and I can make even more of these veggie farms. If you want to make organic farms, which I kind of like, you can click on the brush tool here and then just press E to increase the size of it. And then just like that, I can kind of map out this whole area for a big old fruit farm that I'll use in the future. But this will take me 100 fruits to get. Farmers is 12.08, which is pretty good. I actually want to get that smaller, which I'll talk about a little bit later in my tips and tricks for min-maxing. I want to get as close as I can to 12. Let's do 11.995. That'll be fantastic, and we'll press good to go. So we're going to need a whole bunch of fruits to make these happen. We're going to need basically 111, and we don't have that many. What I'm going to do for the time being is just go to the plebeian tab, press access, and I'm going to make it so people are not allowed to eat fruits, and they're not allowed to eat rations, and maybe not veggies for now, and instead I'm going to let them eat some meat here in a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing with my veggie farms. Let's get some veggie farms going. I'll use the same general tool. I'll make a little tiny guy here, maybe another 10 by 12. Now with these farms set up here, I'm going to have my people make them whenever I'm ready to make them, and this will satisfy my basic food production early on. I'm also going to put a warehouse right next to these areas, and they'll be specifically for those food processes. I'll put them right here on each side. Higher fertility soil means that you're going to produce more things, and so that's why I put them in this particular area where they have the kind of darker brown tiles here, whereas the lighter brown tiles, they have infertile soil. It's just not as good. In the really dark areas, they have basically till. It's not good for any type of farm, right? Whereas down here, you have rich soil, so it's awesome, very suitable for farming. You're going to be really good. I also put them closer to the water here because this area is more moist. Moisture is going to be really important for farms just in general, and so these are going to produce a lot better than the same exact size up here, where it's not as wet, not as much moisture. This right here is going to satisfy our food production pretty well for a while. As soon as I have these planted with all the veggies and all the fruits, then I'll let people eat those things again. But for the meantime, they still need to eat. So let's talk about the other really quick basic food production method, and that's just foraging and hunting. So if you look on the map, I have a few different things that people can eat. In the gray or like white boxes, you can see animals. We've got a few different kinds of animals over here, especially on the north side. I can see the onks, I can see oryx, war beasts, I can see the predators, balta crawlers, I can even see some of the intellidonts down here. So we got a few different options. I'm going to do the one that's relatively close to us so we can make sure we eat stuff. Go down to the jobs, go to hunt, and we'll go ahead and hunt these pigs. It's going to be 100 meat and a bunch of leather as well. My hope is that we put together a really quick warehouse. I'm going to make a really small one. Maybe this one right here. The point being that out of all the things that we make, I want them to make this first. And it's just going to store our basic necessities as well as a couple of extra things. I'm also going to just suspend some of these jobs So that way they just focus on the few things that I want to do right now. I'll press play. These are made out of mud, which probably isn't super helpful right now, but that'll be fine. Okay, now this is ready to go. I'll put one worker and I'll assign all of the basic things that we need. As they get working on those things, I'm also going to do a couple of other stuff. I want to make this warehouse first and foremost, and then I will actually activate these two farms. We do have some meat production now from those pigs that we got, and that's providing all of the food that we need for now. Would have rather made these out of wood, but that's okay. It just takes a little bit longer when you do it this way. Okay, we're currently in day 4 of summer. I don't know if we were able to actually gather any of these. Unclaimed. Did we get any of these? Hopefully we did. We're gonna need a hearth and a well sooner rather than later, so let's just put them up now, and we'll also get some houses whenever that makes sense, but for now we're doing good. All right, we were able to put some fruits and veggies. Hearth and well are up now. Probably want a house sooner rather than later. We'll just put a house for a few of them. Nice little house for everyone to chill and live in. I like to have a storage assigned specifically for that production. That's why I have a warehouse over here. Now we're not gonna have enough veggies by the time this is ready, for sure, but since I've made it so no one's allowed to eat all the veggies or any of the fruits, as soon as we get stuff, they'll be ready to go. Plenty of meat to feed everybody. Day 2 of summer. Definitely want to make sure we get these veggies. I'm going to set up a workstation because this is kind of far away, and I'm going to assign, we'll just put 5 people for now, and their whole job is really to just do foraging since they'll be closer to that area, and this one is just going to be for fruits. And I will assign 1 person to that and 1 person to that warehouse. It's going to be day 3 here in a little bit. All of those other fruits and veggies will be ready to go, and I'm going to get rid of the fruits and veggies in this warehouse and just assign them to meat for now. All of those fruits and veggies are going to go into replanting these new farms. Now they're up though, so we're going to go back to access and we're going to let people eat them. That way they're happier. Okay, we are starting to get some forageable goods as well. That's going to help us out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this workstation, bring them all back over to this area. And just like that, we got basic food production. These veggie farms are going to get up to their full production here in just a little bit. But you can see we'll be producing a pretty significant amount of all of our fruits and veggies. Now, vegetables and fruits are obviously really easy to plant and get going. You already have them available to you regardless of where you put down your settlement because they're part of your throne supplies that you have, which is very nice. It's very helpful to have that. Another thing you can basically immediately get into, of course, is also going to be the pastures. You get a few livestock with you. This tends to be something I do after the fruits and veggies because they just decay so quickly, even if people don't eat them, so it's kind of nice to get them up and running. But you can also put down some pastures basically immediately. All you need is livestock. We currently have 11, so we kind of need to get going. You're going to go into the agriculture tab, husbandry, and you have all these available to you. If they're grayed out, you can't do them yourself right now, but we have options for oryx, which produce meat and leather, balta crawlers, which just produce meat, and livestock. All these produce livestock a little bit as well. Below them, you have intelligents, who also just produce meat, and then onks, who produce meat and cotton, which you can make into clothes, kind of. A few steps later. Anyway, in general, because I'm looking for a single production just for food, it makes sense to get meat going. So intelligents, which would be a really good option for this. Balta crawlers also could be, but you can see the difference in production. Down there it says production for balta crawlers is 0.753 per day, whereas the intelligents is 1.324. This is different if you're running with the Garthemi. Garthemi are the bug people. They're really good at balta crawlers. I'll talk about them a little bit later, but this is definitely what you would do if you had Garthemi already, but we don't, so we're going to do intelligents instead. Same basic process. You want to put them in areas that have high fertility, and another thing you should consider is definitely going to be the capacity. Same basic idea. You want the workers to be as close as you can to a whole number, and just slightly below it is what I've seen a lot of success come from. So we're going to try to get up to 20 if we can. Okay, so this is exactly 20 workers, so it's going to be pretty solid. Got 100% moisture, but it doesn't have any efficiency. Any building that you have, you need it to get up to 100% efficiency, and you do that with the huts. Go ahead and put some huts down. Q and E to make them bigger or smaller. I'll just put a couple down, and also put down a gate right next to where I'm going to have some storage. And just like that, you're going to have this ready to go. I'm going to press OK. Ooh, it does have some areas that are too thin when you use the brush tool. That's not uncommon. Yeah, you can see down here with that build tool, it will get rid of them. It looks like everything's good. It is. I like to get this constructed before we have an issue with running out of livestock. Even if you just have 1 livestock, that'll be better than nothing. But if it's 0, then you're going to have to trade for them. There's no other way for you to get a livestock. You can't take them off of the map. And so it's nice for you to actually use the ones that you get for free instead of having to rely on trade, right? Okay, this one is not going to be for fruits. This one is going to be exclusively for meat. I'll do 30 of them for meat, and the rest of them are going to be for livestock. That's way too many. Let's go ahead and I'll just do 1 for livestock. Everything else will be for meat. We are running out of some workers though, because our pasture is now done. So with the intelligent pasture, we're doing really good. We're still waiting for our animals to get up to a point where they're adults. They'll slowly start to breed as well, and we'll be able to to fill this out. We currently have room for 50 animals. We only have 9. So just as one pasture is going to produce a pretty significant amount of meat for us. Just like that, we have now passed basic production. We've done all of the things we can to bring in some meat consistently, some fruits and veggies, and we're going to be really good. We can sustain pretty decent populations with just these processes alone. And that right there is basic farming production, level 1. Now let's get into level 2, which is going to be mass production, food stalls, and fine-tuning these. So you can just set it and forget it. I gave you some basic tips to really make these pop off, but let's get into actually what makes these work in the first place and how you can turn just this one little area into something truly, truly epic. The first thing you're going to notice for all of these vegetable farms, fruit farms, and even the intelligent pastures or any pastures is they have some just basic production modifiers that add up to what you're going to get. So again, we talked about these fruit farms and veggie farms are only going to produce once per year. Well, how much are they actually going to produce and how much do you actually get? And how can you improve that, right? If you actually look at the fruit farm, you have the 2 windows, which are going to tell you the farm itself and then all of the fruit farms that you have. You can literally click on either one of these and they're going to move you to our 2 farms that we made, right? This is our main farm though. This is where the vast majority of our production is. So let's check them out. If you haven't seen this window before and you're not exactly sure what it means, you can dive into this into as much detail as you like. I'm just going to give you the things that actually matter. So here you have the workers. I like to set this to any number that's going to allow me to tend every single item, and I find that out down here in work value. Currently it's at 100%. That means that everything is being tended to and I'm not losing any sort of value. I'm not losing any fruits essentially from the production. So 12 workers is totally fine for what we need. Over here you have workload. If this is at 100%, you don't have enough workers, and so I would increase this until the workload is just below 100 but not too low, right? You don't want to be wasting people you don't need to work unless you just have an insane amount of people. Next to that is the commute, so how far people are going. That's going to be these people. These people are working at this farm for sure, and so they don't have to go very far. Down below this area you're going to have a moisture reader. It currently says 100%. If you hover over it, it shows you the moisture of the entirety of your area. Very helpful. Currently it says it's 100%. If we actually read the tooltip here, it says towards the middle there, this room needs an average moisture of 100% to get a full boost. So we're there. Current average is 215%, which will result in a 215% target value. And essentially what that means is every single tile on here has a different moisture percentage, right? 80%, 93, all the way down here. If you keep going down, you can see that all the way at the bottom, you have 267% for some tiles. It just averages every single tile that's here and gets us this number. We're at 100%. It's never going to go above 100% because that's the max benefit I guess we can possibly get out of this. So we're doing great on moisture. Down below you have production. So you have the amount of days until harvest. Currently it's 3.6 days. And next to that you have the actual production you're going to get every single day. That's important. This multiplies all those numbers together, the base value, production rate, work value, and bonus to get your estimated harvest. What it does is it produces this number here, 41.23, and then it multiplies that by 16, and that's how much your total harvest is going to be. That's how you get that estimated harvest per year. The things that you can modify from this after you actually build the building are going to be obviously the work value and then the bonus itself. Production rate is simply just the type of product that you're making. So fruit has a 2.1% production rate. Veggies have the same production rate, 2.1, but grain has a higher production rate. I believe it's 4.0. Intelligence, if you look at them, their production rate, what is it? Down here somewhere. The pastures have a different form that they're going to tell you for production, but don't worry about it too much. Essentially, we're trying to increase this number. If you increase this number, everything else gets bigger, and that gets down to the bonus. Bonus is where all the work comes in, and you can see the multipliers. Soil, that's what we talked about. Soil was so important. Moisture was so important, and then species. Bretonians are really great farmers. That's why you get a 1.25 multiplier. It's basically 125% skilled at this, which you can see if you actually click on the Cretonians. You can either look at it here, you go to the fruit farms. Yep, skill is 125%. They also get a bunch of fulfillment from that. They're the highest of any of the species, so they're the best species to have in fruit farms, right? You can also see that in properties as well. If you scroll down this and get to the areas where it says buildings, if you go down to fruit farms, 1.48 is their total production. That's multiplying the moisture in the species. Okay, and now that we know that we need good soil, we need good moisture, what does that mean for our production? Because if we just make another fruit farm, but we put it up here, it'll have this soil, but it's not going to have good moisture, right? In fact, I'll just make a carbon copy of this up here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Put it right there. So this fruit farm right here has 67% moisture, and so the production is actually going to be pretty low. We have moisture at 0.82, which is actually negatively affecting us. Anything multiplied by 1 is itself, right? So anything multiplied by less than 1 is actually a less number. So we're actually losing 18% production from the multipliers here. So we need to get this area more water. It's got plenty of fertility, so that's not an issue. And that's where water pumps come in. This is how you can create mass production by just stacking up your areas by creating a water pump. You go down into water pump. I'm making it as big as possible because that's fine. Now the one thing that you need here that we don't have currently is furniture. So in order for you to actually make this work, you need to get a carpenter going sooner rather than later. I'll just make one right now. All right, now I got a carpenter going. We're going to use some wood for that, but that'll be all right. One thing I noticed about this area, very sparse wood. Overall, that seems totally fine. But slowly we'll be able to get our furniture up and they'll supply this water pump, and then we can get moisture up to this area and probably a couple other areas as well, and just really stack our farms. One of the strategies I did here as well is I just put a couple of warehouses right on each side. So this one has all the wood and stone. This one up here is going to have all of our productions from the carpenter, and so that way it's a nice clean process. These warehouses are probably a little too big, but it works fine for what we need. We are running out of houses though, so let's go ahead and copy over some houses. You tend to not need too much in the way of houses early on. I'll put this one over here. We're likely going to keep having issues with trees, I'm thinking, especially as we keep making our carpenters. One thing with production for the carpenters, of course, is the species. We're essentially getting a 20% debuff on these because these guys are just not as good at making furniture, and so it takes us a little bit longer, but this will be totally fine. You can already see comparatively that we're only getting 28.32 from this particular farm up here, and mainly that's from the bonus. Our bonus right here is only a 1.12 versus the farm down here with the really good moisture is 1.64, so a pretty significant decrease in our moisture, even though the soil and the species is exactly the same. That's why the multipliers come in such important effect, right? Speaking of which, let's go ahead and make another copy of this veggie farm. I'll put it like right here. It's not going to be perfect because the soil isn't as good in some parts, but overall it'll be fine, I think. All right, we got the water pump up and running. This is way too many people, and we also don't have any canals set up, so let's go ahead and set up some canals. Canals allow us to move the water. What I'm doing here is just trying to get up so the vast majority of the areas that need water are going to get it, so that should be really fine. Once these are up and running, the water is going to go to this area. This will go from 66 all the way up to 100% moisture, and our bonus is really solid. The moisture bonus will go up here all up to 1.19, and now this is going to produce exactly the same amount as the other one. Speaking of meat, our animals are starting to grow up. We're getting a couple of more as well as they're producing. Obviously, it takes a little bit longer for the meat to come, but just this one farm is going to produce a lot for us, allow us to grow pretty significant. Now, since it's an average, it's not like you have to wrap around the entirety of these farms with water canals, and I like to make the water pump as big as possible so that way I can continue to extend this way farther than you would think and still be able to reach everything. Just like that, we have increased our production pretty significantly, and in fact, we're not even going to be able to store everything, I think, which is a good problem to have. But you can see we have enough food to last pretty significantly. We're already up to 203 people. People are a little upset, I'm assuming because occupation is an issue. Yeah, occupation. A lot more people want to be employed. Another thing you can do is increase all of your employees in a particular farm or any sort of industry, and that way you will be able to get another bonus. And just like that, we've now employed over 50 in our fruit farms, and as a result, the combined experience is boosting performance. Boosting will continue to increase up until 1,000 employees, so it's a good idea to have more and more employees. You can see in the bonus section of our farm, down in the additive section, but we also got it in our veggie farms, that's great. But yeah, down in the additive section, experience plus 0.01. The more and more employees you have here, the better all of your farms produce. Ends up being a win-win for sure. Our total storage is 3,200. I'm expecting that that should be totally fine for us. And our intelligence are still getting there, 28 out of 50 animals. Production is doing really good. Animals still just need to get up to the adults in order for us to get the most out of them. Probably make more houses, by the way. Put them over here, I'm thinking. Also thinking of adding some more hearths and such. Also some more wells. Another thing to think about with food production is the amount that you're making, also the amount that you're losing. If you hover over to these areas, let's talk about the fruits right now, the decay rate. So this is how many you lose per year for everything that's stored. Currently, if it's just laying on the ground, maybe like in our throne just chilling, we actually lose 50% of those a year. Whereas if we have them stored, we lose 25% of them a year. So obviously it's better to store them. That's why we have the warehouses, right? All of these fruits here, the 1.47 thousand, we're gonna lose some per day. We're gonna lose 25% a year, which equates right now to 23.03 per day, which is a lot of lost stuff. And here's a way that you can solve two problems in one go. And that's with food stalls. So food stalls are really great because they make people happy. Go to distribution, make yourself a little food stall, and I'll just put them right here. Nice little food stall, make it a gigantic one, because why not? And I'll get rid of all the excess stuff that's not needed. Now, the great thing about these food stalls, they will obviously make people more happy because people like food stalls. If you go into services, you can see that food stalls right here, they're a thing that make our people very happy. It's nice to have them. Same thing with markets as well. Of course, they like hearths and wells, stages, fight pits. So this makes people more happy, which means that they're more likely to immigrate in, which is awesome. But they also have another thing which is helpful, which is that they take fruits, whatever sort of food that you're allowing people to eat, they take them and store them in the food stalls for people to actually eat that way, instead of people having to go to like a warehouse or just eat them off of the ground or whatever. whatever. And none of these fruits are counted in the fruits that are actually decaying. You'll notice this if you turn off an entire thing for people they're not allowed to eat. I'll just make a little experiment for us. I'll actually turn back on the rations and check this out. And then I'm immediately going to turn off the rations and allowing no one to eat them. These same guys are never going to decay. This 108 rations, I guarantee you will be there in 20 years. I'll be back. Okay, so now that we know a little bit about food stalls, they're very helpful, and obviously they're super close right now to all of our food production and storage, so we don't really have to worry about them at all. But that's a nice way to basically reduce the amount of extra decay that you have. And just like that, you can mass produce an insane amount of food. Currently, we're producing a whole lot. Our production rate is 240.33, whereas consumption rate is almost half of that, a little bit more than half. All these numbers in storage are not reflective of all the food available. I talked a little bit about the food stalls. If you actually go to the food days, you can see that in our stored areas, we have warehouses, 740 fruits, but there's 101 in food stalls. All of those are still counted in our food days though, which is very helpful. And that means we don't have to worry about like, where did our stuff go? It's not fully stored there. It's also being counted in our, which is pretty sweet. That's going to cover level 2, water pumps, mass production, and food stalls. Now let's get into level 3 of food production, and that's going to be the secondary productions. Mainly I'm talking here about bread. The difference between bread and then all of these fruit and vegetable farms is that in order to get that food product, you need to grow grain and then you need to turn it into bread. And here's how you do it. Go into the farms, go ahead and make yourself a grain farm. I'll do it with a brush tool. I like the brush tool. It's a little bit more organic. It feels nice. We'll make ourselves a good size grain farm here. Try to get up to 20 workers if we can. Like we won't be able to find 16.99. It's going to take 140 grain to actually make this. That's going to be totally fine for us. I think we have some grain on the map here, and it is currently day 1 of summer. Perfect timing. I'm going to forage all of this grain. This is going to be 103. I think I need 140, so we have a little bit more here as well. If you don't have the grain in your area on your tile, then you're actually going to need to trade for that, which isn't difficult. We could trade for it right now. We do have some denarii that people have given us, but I think we'll be fine. All right, we got our grain, put the grain farm to work, and now we are seeding it. This one, we are not going to have any meat. We're not going to have any of that stuff. This is just going to be for grain. These guys will be our grain farmers, as you know. Okay, now that we have all this going, we need that secondary production, which of course is going to be a bread maker. In order to make a bread maker or a bakery, you go into your work, go into refining, and then you go into bakery. Make a decent size one. I'm going to store a little bit of wood in here, so that way we can just have some extras available for us when the time comes. I'm also going to increase our current immigration up to 310, so we have plenty of people almost ready for this. Awesome. So currently our structure is 6 grain and then 1 wood to make 6 bread. You can see already starting to make way more bread. Bread decays 50% per year, so obviously that's pretty tough, but just like that, you got a nice clean smooth operation for pulling in grain and then making bread into here. Again, I like the structures of you having a warehouse for all of your ingestible needs for your production, and then you have the outlet warehouse. So they're kind of separate things, and that makes it just a little bit easier to plan out our general logistics chain. These, again, pretty big for the structures that we have here, but totally fine. And our Intelligent pastures still aren't fully producing, but we're already positive on our meat production, which is awesome. And this is just self-perpetuating from the single farm that we had, or the single, I think it was 11 livestock that we had then. So bread, of course, is a fantastic production thing to make. Another thing that I'd like to access here is what are the foods that the Crotonians like? Well, they like veggies, bread, and fruit. So we have now satisfied all the things that they like. However, in order for you to grow past this, you're going to need to add in another chain somewhere, and it doesn't matter where you add it. You're going to need to start being able to produce rations yourself. Now, we're not allowing anybody to eat these rations that we have, and I think someone gave us a bunch anyway, but at some point, in order for you to field an army and do the next stages of this game, you're going to need to make rations. It's super important. It also makes it so that way your food days stay really high, with also combating the decay rate. When it's stored, it's 2.5%, right? So that goes to show definitely should have a ration maker. Some of our productions here, this is a general production building. Change them to a ration maker. You can see this is the size that I have for them. I can make rations out of bread. That's kind of why I mentioned it. Since this is taking 24 of my workers, I need another 17 here. Let's go ahead and add a couple more houses and our well. You know, we probably should start getting a speaker up as well. And I bet people would also start liking some other things, like a lavatory. People would enjoy that, I think. You can see that the carpenter is a really important early game building. It allows you to continue to build up these other chains as well. If you don't have furniture, you really just can't do much. So ration makers, currently you can turn 6 bread into 2 rations, which is huge. If you also have herbs though, you can turn 3 bread and just a few herbs to make even more rations. So that tends to be the way to go, I think. I'm also going to add in another warehouse over here that will be specifically for the rations, which will be really helpful. Running out of people to work. Let's go ahead and increase this up to 400. Okay, these guys are just going to be for our rations. You can see how long this production chain gets as we continue to grow. Do I even have any herbs here? I do have some herbs over here. Let's go ahead and forage these when it makes sense. It's a little too late for us now. I'm going to go ahead and cancel these jobs because I don't need them anymore. Don't need those. So yeah, we could actually go and buy herbs if we'd like to, because it just takes so little of them to produce so much more of everything else. One thing I'm noticing is that there's a bunch of these potential raiders who can come and get us right now, and we are severely outmatched. Probably just end up paying them off. I'm not too worried about it, at least not with Kryptonians. We are running out of housing already. Seems kind of wild. I'll just add another of these guys. I haven't even added any roads yet. I haven't added any decorations. As I continue to grow more and more, the loyalty and happiness are going to be relatively dependent on those small things that we improve. This video is just all about food production, right? But you can see just how much we're able to produce with honestly very little effort. I haven't needed to trade for anything. I've been able to make everything self-produced, and it's honestly pretty easy. This simple production chain that we have here will be able to get us up to 1,000 people easily if I just continue to let it go. I mean, we have lots of room. Maybe not 1,000, but definitely the production chain is really solid. One of the things you'll notice also is health is going to start becoming an issue as your population grows. You can give people more food rations to help them out with that. That'll decrease your food days, but not that big of a deal. It's probably totally fine. This isn't even the most efficient layout. It's like not even close actually, which I think is pretty cool. So if we were going real hard, we would just make a whole other bread production chain here if we were feeling crazy, and we are. All right, and just like that, we have now had a food production just from this one farm to create bread, and then of course create rations as well. We could also adjust our ration process if we would like to. Maybe instead of the bread, we want to include herbs, and maybe we'll do the meat, right? That could be an option as well. You just need to actually get herbs in order to do that, which leads to the next idea. You could unlock herbs and then grow them, or you can just grab them yourself, and then we can switch the production of our herbs as the thing that we're using with our bread to increase our ration. Also, it's year 10. Let's go ahead and check on the rations here in the food stall. 108. So they literally haven't touched it, and these haven't decayed at all, and they're just stored. But even if people aren't allowed to necessarily eat them, still doesn't matter. They're literally just not going to decay, which is pretty sweet. Make a little change over here. Let's make a huge row of farms, just any sort of farm. It could be, what's the thing that gives them the most fulfillment? 200. It seems like this gives them the most. The fruit orchards. Well, they get a lot from embassies and inns, of course, Yeah, let's just make a huge line of these farms here is what I'm thinking. Bad boy up here. Moisture's still pretty good. I probably don't need to do too much of that over here, but the goal is to get as many of these fruit farms. We'll just make a gigantic one. 55 by 36 should be great. And then along the way, we're gonna make some housing block. We'll make them a 40. Why not do 50 each? 6. We'll put hearths and such here. Big one thing with wells. That'll be great there. And then we'll put some storage, fruits. Put them all right there, right? Have them right in front. All right, let's get going. Start making up these farms here. We'll make another water pump and such. I think wood is going to be the biggest factor for us, so I'm considering just putting up a workstation like right here. Assign maybe 10 or so people to that, and their job is going to be to fell. And that'll be plenty of wood for us. Up to 500 people, by the way. Thinking about increasing this to 650. Maybe we'll hold off. Looking at our bonus for experience in the fruit farms, currently have 170 people, and so our experience is a plus 0.06 additive, which is pretty sweet. Not even exporting anything. This is all just production. This is a very important milestone in your farm and production buildings, specifically because of what we can do next, which leads us into the 4th level of farming and food production: nobility and technology. Once you hit 650 population in version 71 of Songs of Syx, you get 5 nobility. What that essentially means is we can go to any of our population. I can just pick a random person. How about you? Mila, how old are you? Mila's 19. I can elevate Mila to a noble, and with that noble, if I go up to nobilities, Mila's there. I can assign Mila to something. In the veggie farms, we get soil, moisture, and species as multipliers, and we also have have an additive from experience, and that means we have a bunch of workers in this particular production. But we can also increase production by assigning nobility to this production chain. So let's do that here. Let's go to nobles and assign Mila to veggies. Master of vegetables. What this essentially does is it boosts 50 of the workers in the vegetable farms and helps them produce an additional 2.5 each. And what that actually equates to is that our total vegetable production now has an additive of plus 0.98. Let's click on it, go to our bonus, and you can see there below experience, the other blue highlighted area, nobilities, plus 0.98. The max boost that you can get from nobilities is 2.5, and that's if you have a noble essentially able to boost every single worker that you have. And so what we could do is we can go into our population. I like to just sort by age and find someone who's like young. I think these guys mature around like 5 years old. I wish I could sort it. I've seen people be able to sort this in the past. I don't know what happened. Whatever. We'll just do it this way. We're gonna assign 5 young people to nobles, so that way they live a little longer. And I'm gonna assign another person to our veggie farms. Later I'll change this and I'll explain why a little bit in a sec. But this way I'll boost a total of 100 workers in our veggie. Go to the veggie farm. That now gives us a 1.97 boost to our veggies. And if we do one more, that should cover every single worker that we have. We have 127, which means, yep, we get a plus 2.5 nobility boost, and that's the max. The reason I say you don't necessarily, I don't love assigning every single noble to just that one industry. At some point later on, you'll level up and actually get noble level increases, so plus 4 noble promotions. But because we don't have them right now, we're just going to assign 3 of our nobles to this, and then we'll get a huge boost to our vegetables. It'll be awesome. It's pretty significant. It's not a small thing. You can see just from that, we're adding a huge bonus to our production for our veggies. And so now we can produce so much, we could probably give people additional food servings. Honestly, give them up to 2 maybe? Is that too many? That'll make people healthier, although we should probably solve this sooner rather than later. It'd also make them happier because they're able to eat more food. Now that we have the pig pastures really going, these guys don't care as much about meat. And this is why it's helpful to have multiple food productions going at one time, because I'd rather the people eat the bread, right? The meat spoils really quickly. Bread also spoils fast. Bread spoils faster, so I'd rather them eat the bread anyway. But meat also has another benefit, which is if you go to the ration, you can change the recipe from bread to meat. So now we can use that meat that we had to produce even more rations and use slightly more herbs. But that way we're actually able to use that instead of our bread. And that way all the bread production goes directly to making our people happy. You can see the slight adjustments. Now we're getting all of the foods that the plebeians like, and we're producing an additional food production specifically for rations, and then our rations will slowly go up. This has obviously the added benefit of increasing our total supply for food days. Obviously it's only a little right now, but it'll slowly increase, and they just don't decay quickly. Meanwhile, we still fulfill all of the other food needs, which is just fantastic. So you can see how powerful the nobles are for food production of any kind. Currently for our fruit farms, we have it looks like about 5.9. We're reducing the amount of production because the bonus is no longer there anymore. But man, it's just a huge bonus from nobility. So nobilities, I think, is the single most powerful food production increaser in the entire game. But besides that, whenever you're leveling up, you start getting technology points. These technology points, currently we have 40 of them, can be used to increase the productivity of your industries. If you click on up at the top here, this little guy, technology, you'll see this window. Each one of these guys is a different industry that you can level up. So with the vegetable farms, we have a bunch of innovation. If we would like to increase this, what we can do is click on this, and then we are going to invest 4 of our innovation points into that. So it says 0.15, and we go to our veggie farm. If we go to the bonus, underneath nobilities in the additive section, you can see technology 0.15. We're adding even more on top of this, right? Well, you can add a whole bunch of levels to this if you would like to. Let's just invest everything that we have. We've allocated 28 of our innovation points to the vegetable farms, which means that our total bonus now from technology is 1.05. For vegetable farms, the levels increase that additive by 0.15 every single level, and you can see that there's even more levels to go down, of course. So this is stacked on stacked on stacked. You can see just how much more production you're going to get of whatever good, which is awesome. I've done a lot in my city in the past couple of years. I built up a lot of production chains just to get myself prepared for level 5, and that's going to be taxation. That's right, you actually don't even need to produce any of your food at all if you play this correctly, but it's a little harder and there's kind of some caveats to it. Let's kind of get into it. While I was away, while I skipped through time, I increased my production pretty significantly. Obviously have a whole bunch more farms for veggies and fruits, way more farms for grain so I can get some bread production going. I also added some cotton farms to help build clothes. Did that through the weavers to create linen, and then of course the tailors to create clothes from there. I even got a stone mine together just because I had it close by and I had a bunch of extra people. I could continue playing like this. This would not be an issue at all. They're working really hard. I'm making lots of fruits and vegetables. I'm not even able to freaking collect all of it. There's so much. And so I've got a lot of room for continuous growth, right? However, if you want to start thinking about other species that aren't Kryptonians, it might make sense for you to import foods. Now, I don't mean through trade. Trade is a trap. It is a lie. I hate trade in this game so far. It's somewhat realistic, but I hate it. Now, I currently have an occupied territory. It's called Novapuans. And what I did is I gave them a couple of items that would make them happy in their territory. I got them up to 100% loyalty. And all I'm doing right now is asking them for like some supplies in return as taxes. So every single day they're producing 91 stone for us and 107 wood. Now, if you have enough money and if you have enough workforce from your city here, your occupied territory, what you can do here is you can actually remove some of these guys. That way you have enough workforce and you can actually give them some things to tax. So I can make a grain farm, right? So I can construct a grain farm in that particular occupied territory and then they'll actually import grain for me. So I can do that. It's going to cost me 40k denarii, 125 total governor points for all the things that I'm asking them to do, and 1 extra workforce. So I got enough of that. Let's go ahead and do it. So now I have them importing 95 denarii in taxes every day, 91 stone, 107 wood, and 147 grain. Grain and any other sort of like farmable thing, besides meat of course, is only produced once a year, just like it is on your tile, and so it's shipped annually. Currently it's 13 days until this will be shipped to me. And so the grain farm eventually will get it. It'll be awesome. Taxes will get 147 per day once a year. We'll get all of that once a year. So that'll be awesome as well. But as you can see, I mean, the amount that I'm actually producing is 8 times that, roughly 7 or 8 times that. And so I'm able to produce way more than that one occupied territory is going to be able to give me. I could theoretically increase the level of this, but it's going to require that I have higher levels of workforce and that I have higher levels of money, which I just don't have right now. So it's, again, it's like a secondary mini game that you play on top of all this. If you're not interested in that, you just want to make a really big population, level 5 is unnecessary for you. Especially if you have Kryptonians. Kryptonians like working in the farms, and so you're actually hurting yourself if they aren't in those industries that they really like. And so it doesn't make sense for you to import other things that your Kryptonians can make even better here, right? That's not true for other species like Dondorians. If you go to the Dondorians here, you can look and see their preferences for employment. Like at the fruit farm, they get 0% fulfillment from this, and they're only 75% skilled. So this is like the worst people that you can add. I guess besides the, I guess Cantors are a little bit worse. Garthemi are pretty bad at these as well. But Dondorians are not good at farming, and they're not good at any of these pastures as well. And so any of those farming products and food production, Dondorians are not good at, which is why they're actually harder to play in this game, but they're really good at other things like crafting, right? And so the concept would be that you import food from your occupied territories in order to fill all of your food needs and all that kind of stuff. And then you just have your secondary productions. So if you have Garthemi and Dondorians, specifically Dondorians, that level 5 is kind of necessary. You need to bring in either additional species through the occupied territories giving you taxes, or the additional species that you actually bring in to supplant your other needs. So you could actually add in Kryptonians in order to help you out by creating a whole bunch of food. You just need to give them basic satisfaction and fulfillment in the same way you would do. So you can have them immigrate in, give them some areas where they can live and go ahead and do their farm thing, and then you're all good to go. But since I started out with Kryptonians here, I could just keep doing this. It does not make sense for me to import food, but it might make sense for me to import other things, right? Like importing stone is probably not that big of a deal because I have a stone mine, but importing wood, especially on this map, kind of makes sense, right? Definitely want to be importing wood. This system that I have here of deforestation is only going to last me so long. I did this because it's honestly better than the woodcutters, at least volume wise, specifically at the size that you get. I just don't think the woodcutters are worth it. I would rather just cut down trees and then let them regrow because you can cut them again after that. And so level 5 is somewhat optional, but you can see already, I mean, no fulfillment. I really have been spending as little time on fulfillment as possible, and I can sustain somewhere around 2,500 Kryptonians just with the food productions that we have, which really just isn't that many. So that goes to say, if you're thinking about how can I get enough food to supply my people. Considering, is there a way that you can bring in Kryptonians? Is there a way that you can increase your food production with other strategies like the moisture, like the soil and bonuses like that, with huge numbers so you can get higher experience, with nobilities, of course, and then maybe with technology? If you can do it with these ways, that's how I would approach it first. Level 5 is a much more advanced thing, and honestly a little bit harder to get. There's just so much more you need in order to even make those territories worth it for you to get. There you go, guys. That is the 5 levels of farming and food production, starting out with the basic single farm, single food processes, whether that's fruits and veggies, whether that's the pastures that give you meat. Moving on to the mass production, where you start using the water pumps, the food stalls, and gigantic farms, all the way to level 3, where you start adding secondary productions like grain, turning that into bread with the bakery. And then level 4, where you're using your nobilities and your tech points. And then level 5, where you start importing from your occupied territories. Hopefully you got something out of this video. My name's Laundry, and I'll catch you later.